And Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media, while he may not admit it, his job is to cover the Vancouver Canucks, but his absolute favorite sport and event in this town is the Rugby 7. I see you, Coach. They got the Kitsilano Rugby shirt on. Attaboy.
Seems like yesterday we met for a beer at Burgoo, and you gave me a tutorial as I was set to cover or set to call the Canadian men's national rugby team in Union, not in sevens, but he's my rugby tutor.
Oh, he's everybody's rugby tutor. He's everybody's rugby tutor. He knows the game inside and out.
Blake was on top of stuff. It was a very impressive, conversation for a guy who's. I mean, you could tell this guy knows how to call games. He picked up. He's done it before.
My son was playing at the time, so it was a little bit easier.
Right.
As well,
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, as much as I'm sure you'd love to talk who's going to fly half for Canada,
No.
we do have some news this week, courtesy of Jim Rutherford, and I want to get to your post on Blue Sky. Blue Sky,
where you can find me.
Exactly, that is where one now finds Patrick Johnston. Love flipping between windows, incidentally. Thanks for that, Peach. Anyways, the situation is now thus: a Miller trade for sure, but a Pettersson trade is also possible. It's not one or the other. It's Miller or Miller and Pettersson.
Yeah. I mean, I think the and Pettersson part is still highly unlikely. But it seemed pretty clear that part of the reason I should be clear. This is me mostly speculating because Mr. Rutherford is playing very careful with who he talks.
Yes.
Which is fair enough. That's how the game works, I suppose. But here we are. We're going to talk about it. Nothing has changed. Behind the scenes, it continues to be that they recognize they need to make a change. And that change has to be JT Miller. So we'll see how this plays out. I mean, he, like Rutherford himself said, I think he was doing two things there, which was speaking, in the end, I think speaking to his boss, I guess we've all speculated, saying, listen, don't get distracted. Yes, we finally have won a few games, but fundamentally look who we've beaten. First of all, they've beaten two terrible teams, right? St. Louis got bag skated the next day, and Nashville's not been good this year. So, be realistic. The team has not performed up to snuff, and the Stars have not performed up to snuff, and there have been reasons why, which we still haven't uncovered and has not been revealed to us. But it's drastic enough that we're in this position. And he in the end said, yes, it's true. There's a rift, and we think basically we're going to have to make a move to move on from this.
On those reasons, do you believe JT had a confrontation with Pettersson this year outside of what we saw at practice? Do you believe JT had a confrontation with Rick Tocchet at any point during this season?
I think, I'm hesitant about the word confrontation when it comes to Tocchet. Like, we know that they have, Tocchet's told us in the past, like they've gotten raised voices with each other. Mm-hmm. But that's, he's presented as part of that's the deal when I'm coaching JT Miller, right? Mm-hmm. He has been very clear. He handles each of his players in a unique way. So I'm hesitant on that. My impression is absolutely there has been aggressive disagreement. I mean, I don't know what to call it at this point, but that certainly. Yeah, the Miller has not been kind to Pettersson, and that's a large part of the story. I mean, performance beyond that. I mean, that's the frustration for management. Beyond whatever rift there is, bottom line, neither player has performed to the level that they are expected to perform, and that is fundamentally the bottom line here. If they were performing and there were a rift, I mean, this is clear. They'd be winning, and we wouldn't be talking about this. But as Rutherford himself said, this was a situation that we were managing, had been going forward, but the implication is that it entered a new phase this season, and that's why we're in this discussion.
What's the percentage point on them just saying no to all deals because the
and nothing happening?
Yes, and nothing happened. Not because of want, but just they couldn't bring themselves to accept the lowest offer or the best offer. Pardon me.
I mean, it's as I've always said, it's hockey. You never say never, right? Like nothing is done until it's done until you actually see it. So it is not impossible, but is it possible that they go past the deadline, both these players? Yes. Is it possible to go past the draft with both these players? I find that incredibly unlikely. I think, and that's why when we talked to Alvin last week, I mean, he's cagey, obviously, and he didn't want to talk directly on players. But when I said to him, I said essentially he had said something about timing, and I said, "So you mean like as you get closer to the deadline?" And he went, "Yeah, like teams, their position changes." Obviously, the Rantanen trade hadn't happened yet. The Kuzmenko trade hadn't happened yet. Teams are starting to shift stuff around. And obviously the Canucks are paying attention to that and they're looking for the right opportunity. And the Rangers trade got scuttled over retention. And presumably the Canucks don't want to retain. They only have one retention spot right now. They'd probably like to use that differently. Cap space is the thing that's the price here, right? Like they have to recognize that part at the same time. That it's an asset on its own, right? Like it allows you to do other things. If they are going to retain, that means they're allowing another team to do a second thing, right? Like if you're not sending all of Miller's salary, it's not just that you're reducing his cap hit; it's that you're letting the other team have cap space. They're letting the other team do something in theory. So that's where you think carefully about it. If you are going to retain. And so that's why if you're looking at the Rangers, you're going, well, that doesn't gain you, that gains you a lot. If you guys really want to do that, you're going to have to pay more, even if Miller is underperforming and Miller is 32 and on and on and on. But I find it highly unlikely that they will go past certainly the draft. I still think they will make a move before the deadline.
Even if they're in a playoff position, they become the first wild card, which is not crazy to think right now where they are right now. They're in the first wild card position with a week to go before the trade deadline.
Yeah,
they're still trading JT Miller.
Yeah, if the trade is there, like I think that is the thing. Yeah. That is the one door that or other said, "Hey, listen, if it's not perfect, we're not doing it." But I think in the end it is almost sorry, and that's why I think it doesn't go past the draft. But I still think it's unlikely. I mean, I think there's an addition by subtraction feeling here that you move on from Miller and that perhaps resets the situation for Pettersson mentally and whatever else. That said, Pettersson's being paid a lot of money, right? You would think you could overcome this and be more than, he's having the worst season of his career. It's astounding how little he's shooting, how little he's skating. I wrote about this yesterday. His slap shots disappeared. His wrist, his shooting's gone down. He's tipping the puck way more, which is, that's good if he were still shooting in general. But what it tells me is he doesn't have the puck on his stick. And so he's finding other ways, and that's good, I suppose. But he's not moving with any velocity. And I've been told he's not injured. It's just, so is it the teams are checking him harder and he hasn't found a way to beat that? And then if that comes back to him not being strong enough or not having prepared himself well enough for the season, there's a knock-on cascade effects. He said he had tendonitis last season. They're obviously Talkett was dismissive of that. Like there is something about the way the season started and the way he came into the season that to me is a huge issue here. And he hasn't been able to separate himself from defenders and he hasn't been getting the shots off. And he's been scoring a few goals, but he's not creating goals. There's a lot off there. And like I said, I've asked people, is he injured? No, he's not. I mean, Pettersson's never going to talk about it in season, so there's no point in trying to get him and say that, even if you tried. He keeps saying, I got to play better. Well, yeah, you do. Bottom line.
Also says he's his own worst critic, which is no, you're not. Actually, Patrick Alvin is now your just thinking back to those statements in late December, January, people making shit up and creation of the outside world. Wow. I mean, that has been laid bare, naked, and wholly untrue now by Jim Rutherford, which brings me back to your comment about messaging on high. Do you think that was the only calculation here? Assuming you believe it was calculated from Rutherford, that it wasn't just frustration boiling over after being left at the altar by the Rangers on Miller and the Hurricanes on Pettersson. But
Right.
do you believe the calculation was messaging on high? Do you see anything beyond that by way of calculation?
Well, I think so. I mean, listen, I'm someone who generally talks to him, and you can tell when he's coming with a message. And we saw it with the Boudreaux situation. Although I think he recognized that that's when he recognized things are different here. That there's a lot more. There's just a lot more analysis. There's a lot more of this, what we're doing right now. And so everything gets dissected. And so he, clearly, I think he was pretty clearly conscious of that. That said, he was speaking to the market, and, I think probably speaking a little bit to his boss, saying, listen, makes it clear, this is management's position is this, and we are saying this publicly. And that is something that we are going to go forward with. And, like I said, there's a bit of expectations management as well, because of where the market has evolved, given where, like you said, that, I think they thought they had a deal with the Rangers and didn't happen. And obviously they were close with Carolina. Just looking at what else is out there. And obviously the bids are not big. There is interest in JT Miller, but that doesn't mean that there's people willing to pay the price, right? Or what the Canucks think the price should be. And so it's coming back to that, but I still, it wasn't 6 weeks ago for me, it was earlier in January. I had someone say, listen, they've come to recognize they are not going to get full value on a deal, but they have to make a deal. They recognize they have to do that. And I don't think
if Pettersson does remain, given everything that we've just talked about with his game, do you expect Elias Pettersson returns to be the player that he is? Because that's a part of the calculus here. Is how confident are you that he's going to be a star player, if not superstar player?
Well, I mean, that's what he's been most of his career, right? That's the thing.
Yep.
So that said, it's been a year. So,
and it doesn't look like he's snake bitten. It doesn't look like he's unlucky. No, it looks deeper than that.
But this also gets into what Peach was just talking about, how he prepared himself for the season, which looks wanting at this stage.
And listen, he admitted that there was some elements of injury or whatever, and fair enough, I guess. But there's I think there's been frustration. This is not the first time there's been frustration. I think there's been frustration in the past. It's a tough thing for top and elite talents to recognize, because you get here and you succeed, and then things shift. Teams, the entire existence of other teams is basically to stop you. And at some point they may figure that out, and it's on you to figure out how to adjust. And that's, that is the challenge I think he's now in, is that he's going to have to recognize how to adjust further to the way teams are defending it.
We're asking,
and whether that comes to preparation or otherwise. I mean, he's got to find that answer.
Which brings us to our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. We're asking you, do you have full confidence in Canucks management? What do you think, Patrick? Should Canucks fans have full confidence in this management, or are you stopping short of that?
I mean, I would have said at the beginning of the season full. I think this is a huge challenge for them. There is absolutely no doubt about that. They had hit a lot of things right until this season. So, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think you can say full confidence still, but this is the test. I think we're in it now, right? Whatever they're able to pull out of this, if they're able to pull out of this in a way that, in a way that they've been able to say pull out of their cap problem, right? It's pretty clear to me that when Rutherford arrived, he did not recognize. I mean, I don't think anybody quite understood what a disaster the salary cap setup was. And they have been aggressive, and they've managed their way out of it. There's still obviously things for them to navigate that they've created for themselves, like the OEL cap hit, but they have cap space, right? Which is what they wanted. They had been looking for cap space for 2 years, and they have cap space now, and they in theory could do something with that. So that I would count as a positive, as a and look at the season they delivered last year, right? Like the delivery has been there. But now this season, there's been some misfires. The defense has not worked out the way they thought it would. Obviously they broke the puck out a lot better in the last 2 games. Like, I think the system seems to be working better. I think Rick Tocchet has managed to find a way back into where he wants things to be, which involves people cutting the net, by the way, despite what people believe online. Like, he wants people to attack the net, and we've seen them do that more often than not lately. Mm-hmm. But they are still in a pickle. They're still, in a playoff fight. And if they start winning some games and they pile up and they get up and they catch up to the Kings and all of a sudden they find themselves third and in a secure spot, like,
given how rosy it was a year ago, are jobs on the line here? Like, like how they navigate their way through this? Is Patrick Alvin's job on the line, even Rutherford's? And we know the uncertainty around Tocchet as well. Like, are we talking there's a possibility for wholesale changes depending on and wins and losses are part of that, but I just mean more the player and asset management.
I have not been necessarily thinking about it in terms of management. However, I will note that it is year 4, and this is the 3rd or 4th, depending on how you want to count, regime essentially that they've had. Obviously, Mike Gillis, things went wrong in year 4. Trevor Linden was gone after year 4. Jim Benning was let go in his 4th year as the sole guy in charge. And this is essentially, we're now into year 4 because, Rutherford was hired December 2021. So, I think it's early to discuss management changes.
No, we need to see what happens here.
But we need to see what happens. I was going to say the timing's there. Like, it's just I find it intriguing that's been the pattern, other than Dave Nonis, but Dave Nonis was obviously inherited. But yeah, and the Tocchet question is going to be there. Is absolutely going to be there. It's a huge test. That's the other thing. If he writes the ship here, I mean, the guy's writing his ticket in the summer. I mean, obviously the Canucks hold a team option, but it's also he'll be like, listen, I will respect this contract, but
if they salvage this and get up to like 3rd in the division, like, you're right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No, I forget who the report came from earlier this month, but I think there's already a market for Rick Tocchet.
Sure.
I think there's a number of teams that would hire Tocchet.
Yeah.
If they had vacancies. I even think there might be a team or two that look at their own guy and do what St. Louis did this year and said, you know what, he's better than the guy we got now. Let's move on the guy we got now and bring in Rick.
Yeah, I think so.
We're a long way from there.
The thing with Rick is that, listen, I do think he's a good coach, and but he's such a good communicator, right? Like, that's to his advantage in all of this. He will be able to convince teams that he's the guy, and certainly last year he delivered. And I would say on the whole in Arizona, he delivered. He didn't have a lot to work with a lot of the time there. You could do a lot. You could certainly do a lot worse than hiring Rick Tocchet as your coach. Mm-hmm. And if he pulls this out here, and you're absolutely right, Matt. Like, I'm sure there's already a mark, but that makes the market even better for him.
Yeah. Last question. Elias Pettersson to Columbus for Cole Sillinger and Kent Johnson. Who says no?
I think Columbus.
Okay.
Because that's 2 pretty great players.
Both having they're both having pretty decent seasons there. Johnson, of course, British Columbia, and there was a little bit of failure to launch there, but he's there now.
Yeah.
And he's 32 and 37, and Sillinger is 24 and 46. So,
yeah, and to me, it's about, listen, who's the best player in that trade is probably it's Pettersson, I think, and that's generally how you say you win the trade, but that's a big price to pay.
Yeah,
especially when you are Columbus.
But are the combined prices of those 2 players, especially with the salary cap rising, very quickly going to usurp the 11.6?
Oh, for sure,
Pettersson?
For sure.
So, from a cost management perspective for the Columbus Blue Jackets,
especially since this would be one of the franchises that is a little bit shook by today's announcement of how far this ceiling is going on the NHL salary cap.
It is a bit of
The problem is they're both
It's a
under
Moneyball
contract
question,
for
right? Like
4.3 combined over the next 2 years. So it's a hell of a lot more money to
Soldier's
spend.
got 1 year left. 1 year left.
It's a Moneyball question, right? Like it's
He's
a
got
bit
2
like
years left. So 1 year after this one, yeah.
You know, what's your value on the salary that you're getting, and what's it going to cost to get the second guy that you add him up to Elias Pettersson that gets you better than what Sillinger and Johnston get you combined, right? Like it's an equation. It's not just that guy's the best player.
Yeah,
for sure. You have a marvelous weekend. You'll be in here for a couple of days with me next week, co-hosting for Blake. I very much look forward to that. We'll have a ton of fun.
And a whole bunch of rink wide.
And a whole bunch of rink wide, too.
Wow. Busy man.
You're the man, Patrick. Thank you.
Games. You know, I think it's starting. And
right. Irf's doing a lot of work with the Invictus games.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Look forward to having you here.
All right, guys.